Garry Rogers, hello and welcome. Thank you for having us here at GRM on the V8 Sleuth
Aaron,
Podcast.
You're one of the few that are always very welcome.
Oh, stop it. You have such a ripping sense of humour. The dress-ups, the fun that you've had over the years in racing and away from racing. But where does the sense of humour come from? Is that from your parents? Was there someone when you were younger that influenced you to see the bright side of life? Where did this whole thing come from for you?
Well, look, I just like fun. Like my dad was my father was an SP bookmaker. He had a whole lot of fun people, sort of ordinary heads that people would call them. They were bloody good people. Those sort of people have got a bit of humour in their life. They've got stories to tell, and I think interesting stories which create a bit of humour in themselves. And I don't know, I just like to sort of, rather than just waffle about things, if you can create a bit of humour and give people a bit of fun, then to me you've done something pretty good.
It's hard to pick one. Your dress-ups, your grid stuff. I tried to put together a top 5 before I came to see you. And in no particular order, and there's probably a few I've left out here.
Right.
ABBA, of course the Volvo deal was great for you because you had a whole pile of new dress-ups to do.
Yep.
The sauna on the grid. Remember that you brought out the sauna?
Well, I certainly do remember the sauna. You know where the sauna ended up, don't you?
Where is the sauna?
Actually, the sauna, now that's a very good story. When we eventually sent some of the componentry back to Sweden when the deal was finalised, because everyone over there had very fond memories of me in certain terms, so I thought we sent all the gear in a big container.
And this is the race cars and the parts and all that
parts
stuff.
And odds and ends, it's just documentation in general. Well, we had it fully loaded, right, and there was a tiny little bit of space right at the very end. So I thought, we'll just squeeze the sauna in there because it had my head on the front of the sauna. I thought they're going to open. They thought I was out of their life by then, of course, you see. Of course, when they opened the container, here we were. Anyway, that's how it was.
Did they ever tell you that they found it or they saw it or they just not comment on it?
I still talk to quite a few people there, so they found it very, very amusing.
Monica and Bill wouldn't get a run these days, I don't reckon.
Why?
Oh, cutting it fine, don't you think?
No.
No?
It's a fact of life.
True.
People need to accept things happen. You know, we can all be politically correct to a certain extent, but you've also got to accept the fact that things do happen. And look, if you can't have a look, I personally think the mirthful side of that probably lightened it up a bit rather than getting it too serious.
Which was your favourite? There's a lot to pick from, but which was your favourite that you thought that was the best one that we did?
Probably, I suppose, because we won the Bathurst race, Lady Godiva on the horse.
That's right.
That was probably one of our best. And also Camilla Parker Bowles.
I forgot about that
when she got a run. That was that was quite a good one as well.
Who did your outfits? How did you do all that? Did you do all that?
Yeah, look, Draffo worked with me. Draffo and I worked together for years and years and years and years, like in the car business and all sorts of things.
And that's Glenn Draffo.
Yeah, Glenn
Draffo. He worked at the race team here for a while.
He worked in the race team, but he's got a great sense and a shocking wit. Like he's a terrible, if you think I'm bad politically correctly wise, give it him a go. Let me tell you right now, he's the best. But anyway, look, we used to conjure him up, think about who was in the news of the day. If it was newsworthy and had a bit of a story attached to it, it was worth doing. But we didn't do it just to try and make fun of people. We wanted to take the sense of what was happening in the news at the moment and try and make a bit of fun out of that. Yeah.
Was there any that you decided not to do or that were too hard to do or that you didn't get to do it? You ran out of time. You executed every single one that you wanted to do.
And to be quite frank, I'm thinking of doing it again. And I know there'll be certain people in the media and in the public arena who say, well, Garry Rogers shouldn't do that. That's sort of in poor taste. Well, bad luck for them because I think there are certain people who consider it to be a bit of light-hearted fun. And hey, in today's world, we are lacking a lot of light-hearted fun.
So can you give us a hint on where you're thinking of doing
it? No, I honestly don't know.
All right, okay.
It'll be a moment
there's no
come,
plan.
And there'll be something in the news and I'll think about that and I'll ring Draff and I'll say, hey, listen, what do you think about this? And between us, we'll have a couple of beers and waffle a bit of crap and come up with an idea. It's very simple stuff, this.
Why be difficult? Why make it hard? Why make it hard?
Yes. There's enough people trying to do that.
True, that's true. We're surrounded by cool history here at GRM. I mean, where we're sitting right now, there's trophies, there's model cars, there's a real supercar just over our shoulder here, one of the last ZB Commodores.
Yes, that's correct.
There's an engine, there's trophies, there's champagne bottles that I think are empty. I'm presuming that they're empty anyway. What was the start for you of racing? Why did you start doing it? What got you into it?
Oh, well, I started in, what my first job was, I used to muck around with horses. I used to break a few horses in and ride horses and have fun with horses. And my brother ended up, we were at Marsland College in Camberwell. He was 5 years older than I was. He went off to university to medicine. And I was poking around my horse, and my mum said to my dad, "You can't do that. Gary's got to get a proper job." The only other thing that really, actually, I nearly became a plumber. Imagine me in the dunnies. Anyway, so I did a mechanics apprenticeship at Neil's Trucks in Port Melbourne as a diesel mechanic. And during the course of that, I was always interested in car racing, and I sort of followed it. And then got my first early model Holden racing car, raced that car at Winton, and had a bit of success, and it just went from there.
So it was a humpy Holden.
It was a humpy,
yeah.
OL 606.
Oh.
It was a road registered car. Pardon me.
How's the memory? I mean,
I know.
It's as much today as it was yesterday. And what are we talking back then? Are we talking just some mates coming and helping you run this car?
A guy called Russell Brown, who was a really good friend of mine. His dad had a business called White Horse Industries, and they're metal spinners. We used to use his old workshop at the back and poke around with the thing and get it to go, and something would break, you'd fix it and you'd keep going. And Barry's mum, Beverly, sort of Russell Brown, his girlfriend, and Beverly and I were the team. We got the car to go. We didn't win a lot. We won a race here and there and had a lot of fun. And, of course, just really enjoyed it. And I think that's what really got me hooked on it. Pardon me, it wasn't so much the actual racing itself, it was the sort of association with people you could have a bit of fun with. Yeah.
The social aspect, the catching up and the...
Fun. It wasn't actually being social in those days, was sitting under the gum tree drinking a long neck. Hey, seriously. That's
after the race.
It was.
After the race?
Of course.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought so. And at that time, you're not thinking this is a career or a life's body of work. This is a bit of fun.
Yes, because it wasn't really a career in motorsport back then. There was, you had Frank Maddage and Neil Allen and those sort of people, and probably the Gagan brothers, but really it wasn't a defining moment in life where you could say, well, look, I want to make a career out of this. Probably 10 years after that, it had got that way, but by then I was starting to establish my car business, and that was taking a lot of time. And also I'd started poking around with harness racing horses. I was doing a bit of that. So you'd have to say that whilst I enjoyed doing it, I probably wasn't committed enough to jeopardise, or not even jeopardise, but put everything else a little bit aside and devote the time that you would have to do it properly.
What started the car dealership stuff? Was there a wheeler and dealer gene in you from in the early days?
Well, when I was doing my apprenticeship, I started at Neil's Trucks, and then I finished at Coffees in Ringwood, who were Ford dealers. And there was a fellow there, Alf Newton, who was a used car manager, and I was doing the last 2 years of my apprenticeship there. And I got talking to him, and I watched what they did, and I saw these people coming in buying all the old bombs on the back roads, and I'd see these cars disappearing and going, and I thought, well, someone's obviously doing something with these, and so I sort of smelt the ground and worked out where they went and who was getting them. And so I started to buy a couple of those from Alf and other car dealers while I was still doing my apprenticeship. And then I got a little car yard in Whitehorse Road in Nunawading, and I opened my first car yard there. Just really was only a handful of cars and trying to make a couple of bob, because by that stage I was racing my car and I needed money to do that. And also I'd sort of had my minor involvement in harness racing, albeit small at that stage. I just needed some funds, and I was never going to make the right amount of funds that I needed by being an apprentice motor mechanic. So that's pretty much how it started. Harness
racing. So are we talking owning, training, driving? What was the Garry link there?
Well, as I say, as a young person, I was always riding horses and being involved with horses. And then... Ron, do you remember Ron Wannells, or would you know Ron? Anyway, totally. Ron Wannells had a harness racing
you raced with Bathurst?
Yeah, I raced with him at Bathurst. Anyway, what happened, he rang me one Saturday afternoon and he said, could I go to Moonee Valley? He was in Queensland with his horses and I was down here, but not with horses at this stage. And he said, look, I've got a horse racing tonight. He said, can you go to Moonee Valley and back it for me? I bought it from a bloke in Miners Rest.
Which is up Ballarat
way. And I said, oh, yeah. So anyway, I went out and I backed the horse, and the horse actually won. While I'm watching the race, there's people there talking about this horse. And anyway, when it was all over, I went over and I said, do you know something about that horse? And they said, oh, yeah, we sold that horse to a bloke called Ron Wannells. in Queensland about a week ago. I said, oh, yeah, that's right. Anyway, to cut a long story short, these people were just knockabout family people, and I thought they were sort of not bad people. Anyway, I said to them, look, I wouldn't mind getting a harness racing horse and going harness racing down here. If I got one, would you be able to look after it for me? Anyway, look, this could take days, but one thing led to another, 3 or 4 months later. I didn't hear from them for ages. The next thing, they rang me, they'd said I got a horse for me, which was called Dolan Gold. And fair dinkum, it was a donkey. It was a good old horse, but it could barely run. But anyway, so it actually did win a race, and that really just started to get me hooked. And by then I'm sort of, because I, as I say, always loved the horse thing. And so that then led to another thing, and then the Wilson people came from Miners Rest. I bought my farm where I still currently live. I mean, this all took a period of time, but they moved down, and then I went to the sales to buy a horse and bought 10.
The bug's bitten.
Anyway, that's right.
Bitten.
Anyway,
Yeah.
look, but of course by then I'm helping Bob Wilson doing the training. And I thought, gee, I wouldn't mind driving a horse in these races, because I was doing a little bit of the track work at home, albeit, it was no big deal. You just blaze up and down the road, and then by that stage I put a track in later, but then we were just training on the side road. Anyway, so I went and got a licence and started to have a drive here and there in a race, and it was all good fun.
Did you win any of those races?
Yeah, I did.
Good man. Good man. One of the things I love when I come to your workshop over the years, there's so many familiar faces. And there's guys who've been with you for many, many years. And I know more of them by their nickname than their real name. I had to dig on a few of them to know what their real name was.
Do you know, there's people here, I do not know their real name, because they've always had nicknames.
But you've got to have a nickname if you work at GRM, don't you? You don't get a gig if you don't have a nickname.
No, you do, but you get one by circumstance. No different to what I was talking about before about the dress-ups. Something happens along the way, and you associate with that person with something, so all of a sudden that's their nickname.
So when I think Michael Caruso, Robinson
Caruso
makes sense.
Yep.
Jeff Marshall, engine bloke who's been here for years. Gypsy,
Gypsy
why?
Earrings? Hey, from day one, he came here with these earrings. I thought, we've imported a bloody gypsy here. And of course, someone said gypsy. And of course, It's stuck.
Kevin Scheuer, who was here for many, many
years.
Shirl,
the singer, Shirl with all the big curls.
Shirley Strawn.
Yeah, Shirley Strawn, because Shirl had all that great big curls like him when he started. So he became Shirl.
I'm trying to think who else.
The Owl, Richard Holloway.
Oh,
yeah. Because, I considered the Owl to be the wise because he was so calm, cool, and I'd be trying to excite him, and he'd be saying, go on, guys, no, we won't this, So I nicknamed the Owl.
Yeah.
It's just how it is.
I love it. I think it's great. What do you deem leadership? I mean, you've got these people who are so loyal and been with you for so long, and clearly that's for a reason. How do you lead? What's your theory on leadership and direction?
Look, there's only one. I don't care whether you're the managing director, the prime minister, you're the cleaner, whatever. If you want to lead people, you lead them by example.
Mm.
You ask people to do things so long as you're prepared to either do it yourself or help them do it. And I think money's important. You've got to make sure people get rewarded reasonably well. But I think if you can give people a good example of... I'm really fortunate. My parents were very strict Catholics, and yet we had a lot of fun. As I said, my dad was an SP bookie. We had a lot of drunks used to come around and get paid of a Saturday night, but we had that sort of background where you had rules and regulations, and you learned respect and some self-disciplines. And I think during my work life, I've been able to get that in myself. And perhaps we've had a lot of young guys come here, and I'm really happy with the way most of them have turned out for us, because I just think that I make sure they have fun here, but I make sure, hey, let me tell you, people see the funny side of me, but I can be a disciplinarian if I have to be, but you don't need to do that just because you think you should.
Mm. We talked about horses. Can you clarify a story for me?
Right.
So I heard a story from one of you guys, and when you hear the story, you probably will figure out who it is. But I was told that over the years you've had lots of horses.
Right. I hope this doesn't...
This won't hurt. This won't hurt.
Include any of my wives and things here, but this...
No. It's a horse story. So along the way, you've had many, many horses. So there was something of an avenue of honour at your I think it was in Tassie, actually, with a cross for all of them with their name on them.
No, it's at my farm.
At the farm.
It's a burial site.
So along the way, were you taking you had some guests or something like there, and you were showing, and you hadn't seen them, and you walked along, and there's that horse's name, and I remember that one, and this one, and what was on the last cross?
My name, because Les Creeley, who was a bigger practical joker
I've dubbed
than
him
I
in there,
am,
haven't I?
he's an absolute shocker, and I got all these crosses that stand by the river because when the horses get old, I try and keep them. I don't like them to go to the meatworks, and some I give to kids as riding horses, and that works pretty well. And occasionally, you've got to put some of them down. The fact is, they just can't eat properly. They're going to die anyway. But so I started a little graveyard, and I'm fortunate. I've got a fair-sized property, and I've got this section down by the river. And a good friend of mine who lives down the road from the farmer, whose nickname is Grubby.
Everyone's got to have a nickname.
And he's got a backhoe, so we started to bury them one by one by one. And then one day I was trying to remember the names of them all because there was a lot had been there. So I started to make a cross, or I did make a cross and put their names on them. And anyway, Les Creeley came, and he was helping me do this over the years, just sort of because he lives down the road. Anyway, you're right. I had some visitors actually visiting one day, and they were interested in our horses, and I talked them down, walked them through the farm. We came to the graveyard, and like I've got Tasman, Texas, Hilarious Way, all these horses. And I get down the end, and I'm reading the names. The next thing I read on the big cross, Garry Rogers, and I thought, bloody Les Creeley, I knew. Anyway, so I'm buried before I actually was dead.
I thought it was a great story. I thought it pretty much typified that it's getting one back, but I'm sure that you could always find one too.
There's a bit of mirth in that, so there's nothing wrong with that.
No, nothing wrong with that. No. What was your favourite horse over the years? What was it called? What was the most successful one, maybe?
I had a really good trotting horse called Ronorail, who was a really, really good horse. I'd probably have to say he's the most successful horse I've had, but I've had quite a few. I've never had what you'd call an absolute champion horse, but let me tell you, not many people have. But really, I've been able to afford what I do because I haven't spent a lot of money. We've bred most of our own. We buy a few, but I've been able to sort of get a reasonable band of broodmares around me. We don't breed a lot anymore, maybe 2 or 3 a year. And if we break them in and get them going, if they go okay, we'll race those. Otherwise, we'll sell them on to the country somewhere. He'd be probably my most successful horse. But look, they're all favourite horses. Probably my most favourite horse is a whole horse called Tasman, Texas. And he is a great big... He's a bit like you, and big people are friendly, nice people. He's a great, big, friendly horse. He was a beauty. And I don't bet much, but I was at the races at Cranbourne this day, and he was in there, and Bob had trained him, and he said, and Bob Wilson, horse trainers are the worst, right? They believe everything. They really love them. This horse, he said to me, Tex will win today.
Get on it.
Possibly. Yeah, he said, can't. And so I walk into the betting ring. I was paying 33 to 1. I think there is no way this horse will win today. Anyway, I had a small bet because, as I said, I'm not old pro. I think I had $50 on the horse at 33 to 1. Wasn't a bad bet. Anyway, the horse did win, but he sort of in later life he got knee problems and he ended up dying. He got buried there, but I had a lot of fun with that horse, and he really he's just sort of something special about him. Yeah.
Did you derive more enjoyment from wins in horses than cars, or are they both? You can't really compare the two.
Look, they're both I didn't drive a lot of horse races. I drove a handful of horse races. I would have liked to have done more, but I was busy doing other things. Look, let me tell you, they are serious competitors, those people. But, and the girls are as tough as the blokes. And there's no give or take. You get on with it. Look, I've enjoyed both, but as which... I'd probably say that horses are probably my most favourite thing.
Understandable. I mean, you've got horsepower covered from either perspective that you... Yeah,
I'm referring to the ones with 4 legs.
Yes. Rather than 4 wheels.
I suppose they've got 4 legs, but they've got 4 wheels instead of 4 legs.
Exactly. We talked about the Humpy Holden. So what was the evolution there? EH, Holden?
No, I went from the Humpy to the Escort Sports and Ant.
Yep.
No, sorry, that's not right. I went from the Humpy to the EH.
I'm looking at there's a board over in the corner here.
Yeah, can't have a look.
EH.
Yeah, the EH.
Escort.
The Escort. Yeah. And then it all went on and rolled from there. And then it started the sports sedans. I had the
that was
the
big
Fatty
back then,
Gagan.
wasn't it? was big. Sports sedans,
Yeah, they
70s
were.
was
Yeah.
huge.
Well, Bob Jane had the money deal, the money races at Calder. The Toby, and then in Sydney they had the Toby Lee series. There was reasonable prize money.
Yeah.
But back then it didn't cost a lot to do it. So if you could pick up $100 or a couple $100, you could pay your fuel and have a bit of fun. Yeah, so then that all just went through sports sedans. And then I started the touring cars. Then we went to the Thunderdome, of course. And then just, I don't know, it just rolled along. I mean, really, I didn't have this great grand plan, but I enjoyed what I was doing. I was able to then, fortunately, get some reasonably good sponsorship parties around me. And then Stephen Richards, because we got involved in the Formula Ford program reasonably intensely through Michael Ritter, because Michael Ritter Graham Ritter was married to my sister. And that's how Michael was part of family. And actually Michael Ritter knew a driver and I would talk to him and say, you know, I think this, and he would tell me what he thought. And actually, I think he helped me a lot with my driver selections.
There's plenty of drivers that have come through. GRM and Sonic, Michael's team, have a lot of similarities. You know, young drivers and opportunities.
Yeah.
Where we're actually sitting in the foyer here at GRM, and the ZB supercar, one of the last supercars, which was Garth Tanner's last car when he drove for you. It's now in the retro livery that is based on your Tirana A9X from the late 70s.
Yeah, well, that, of course, was the car bought from Bob Jane. Now, that's another story.
Tell me the story of that.
Okay, this is a good story. You probably shouldn't speak evil of the dead, but Ivan Stibbard, who was the manager of the ARDC at the time, and I'd entered to go to Bathurst with...
Was this the Darryl Wilcox story?
Yes, with Darryl Wilcox.
This was 78, I think.
Yeah.
So Bob Jane had built a Tirana A9X.
Yeah, well, he and Fatty Gagan were going to drive, in that colour.
Yeah,
they were going to
Sebring orange,
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, what happened, I entered my car with Darryl Wilcox and Ivan Stibbard. Now, this is actually a good story. I had a guy called John Andrew work for me in my car business who was a knockabout bloke, a good bloke, but he's just very impulsive, impatient person. And he'd come to Amaroo to watch me race. I'm just trying to think what I was racing there. But anyway, he'd come to Amaroo. He'd worked in the K-Yard on Saturday and flew up Saturday night and come to Amaroo Sunday. And, of course, he went to the gate. They wouldn't let him in. And John Andrew's not that sort of person, of course. So there was a bit of activity occurred at the gate.
A disagreement of sorts?
Well, yeah, you'd say that.
Right.
And then, of course, from that moment on, Ivan Stibbard, I never really got on anyway, but of course by this stage then everyone, you know, John Andrew had punched the living crap out of this bloke and therefore, you know, I was him and that wasn't good and, you know, anyway, that was how it was.
And,
so then I went to the
Bathurst too, that was the tough bit.
Exactly. So when I put the entry in, he knocked the entry back. And of course by this stage I'd got Greater Pacific Finance on board with a reasonable sponsorship arrangement. And I'd convinced them that we're going to be at Bathurst, and one thing led to another. So then I bought that car and the entry of Bob Jane because he was humming and ahhing whether he was go, whether he wouldn't. So then Fatty Gagan and I actually drove that car. But anyway, it ended in tears because I'd gone through all that trouble and a broken engine. We didn't go anywhere, but it was all part of the history.
At that point, so we're in that. You know, that's muscle car top period. You know, Tiranas and hardtop Falcons and. So many of our listeners and viewers love that Group C period of stuff. At that stage, though, was racing not the priority. The car business was growing.
Yes, it was.
The racing, you kind of did it when you could, how you could. And
it was, and look, it wasn't like you knew a program. I tried to follow the Sports and N series because I had reasonably good success with my Escort, which was a really good little 2-litre car, but it was also a pretty competitive outright car at times. But like you said, you know, I was sort of building my car business. I'd opened up car yards in other spots and I was trying to really get that going. So, yes, you'd have to say, and that's like I said at the start, probably I didn't get serious enough about it. And that's not to say I would have been good enough anyway, but the fact is, you know, I just got on with what I was doing and I'm not sorry that I did what I did because it's all worked out okay in the end.
Where was the first car yard?
Nunawading, 273 Whitehorse Road, Nunawading.
LMCT?
No, you didn't have LMCTs
Didn't even have
then.
that back then.
No. You need to have a second-hand dealer's licence. You had that, you were in.
And how did you grow that?
Well, actually, my LMCT, funnily enough, is 484. It's one of the first. I've still got it.
Oh, why get rid of it?
Well, when they came in and you had to get one, old Harry McLaughlin in Elizabeth Street, who was about 99, not out, but a really lovely old bloke, he and I were good friends. He and I were going to be the first number 1 and number 2, but I was overseas at the time. He got number 1, and then by the time I got back, I got 484. Anyway, that's how it happened.
Got it in front of you.
Yeah.
How big did that business grow, the car side of things?
Oh, it was quite a substantial business. And that's sort of a bit of history here, because Barry at that stage had, like I had the car yards and I was doing that, and he used to work there every weekend, like washing cars and doing the odds and ends. And then he was finishing school, and he was quite a good student at school. And he kept wanting to come into the car business. And I said, no, well, that's not really a good idea. I don't think the car business is a good thing. And I suggested, or he really was a bit keen then to do the real estate valuers course, which he went and did that. And he did very well at that. And but all through it, he just kept saying, even though he graduated and he'd worn that, what are they, cheesebirds and all this, a load of crap all that is. But anyway, he looked quite pretty in it, funnily enough. Anyway, so we went to the presentation, and he said, listen, I want to be in the car business. If you don't give me a job, I'm going to go and get a job, a car place somewhere else. Anyway, history now says that he came to work, he did a great job there, and then after a period of time, probably about 10 years, he and my used car manager went out on their own, opened their own used car business, did very, very well at that. And actually, now this is a good part of the story. Then what happened, he then went in, opened up another business in Pakenham, another car business there on his own, because his other partners stayed at Furniture Going. Anyway, I used to call him and see him on the way home, because I'd go past his car yard most nights on the way to the farm. And I called him one night, and he said, I'm thinking of selling out. And I said, what do you mean you think of selling out? He said, I've had an offer to sell out. And I said, what? Because he'd bought the property in Pakenham along the highway. And he said, the whole thing, the business and the yard. I said, well, if I were you, I wouldn't sell the yard. I mean, to me, you should keep that. If you can sell the business, and, so be it. But I said, what are you going to do? And he looked at me, and I thought he was kidding, seriously. He looked at me and he said, I think I might just come down and give you a hand. I said, yeah, well, I liked the idea of it, but I was thinking he was half pulling my leg.
As in the dealership work or the race team?
No, I'd got out of the car dealership, so I was doing the racing thing full time. He said, I think I might come down and give you a hand. Anyway, I went home and I said to Kay that night, I said, Barry's thinking of selling his business. Anyway, one thing led to another. I called in there about a few weeks later, again, to have a drink with him one night. He said, I've done that deal. And I said, done what deal? He said, I've sold the business, but I've kept the property. I said, oh, yeah, good. Anyway, lo and behold, within the week, I've got these trucks pulling out the front here, unloading all these used cars that he hadn't been able to get rid of. And he's been here ever since.
He couldn't get rid of him.
I tell you, it's been fantastic for me, absolutely. He's just done such a great job of... I still like to poke around a bit at home with my horses and do things, but, he gets on really well with the sponsor group, the staff get on well with him. So, that's been a big positive for me.
How many people ask if you're brothers? I've heard people ask if Garry and Barry are brothers.
I love this story, right? He hates it, right?
Go on, tell.
Yeah. Because you have a look at him. He's aged. I tell you, I've been tough on him, right? But I'm still so young and glamorous, right?
It's true.
So what happens, everywhere we go, they think we're brothers. And, of course, I don't say we're not. So it's quite a good talking point at times.
Love it. That's sensational. So we talked, Gaz, about that A9X Tirana, the car he's based on.
Yep.
I found some vision recently. I don't know if you've ever seen the vision of this, well, not for a long time. You had the biggest shunt of all shunts in that car.
And I'll tell you, Amaroo, I know, and it flattened.
Head on into a concrete wall virtually.
No, actually side on.
So you got to the sort of side,
that's
the old stop corner. Tell everyone.
Ease a little bit of acceleration off. Did you like that? Skill.
Yeah.
I didn't want to hit quite head on.
Nearly.
It was pure luck.
What happened?
I lost control.
Oh, I thought the car did something wrong.
The cars never are the problem. I love it when the accident report says, and the car ran out of control. The fall behind the wheel ran out of control.
So that's what happened that day?
Yes.
And it rode it off. It was pancake.
It did.
Yeah. And you got out of it, though.
I did.
Is that bigger or the same or not quite as big as the 81?
No, the 81 was the worst by a long shot.
That's the for those who don't know, the top of the mountain, the race got stopped, multi-car pile-up, Bobby Morris and Christine Gibson got together, all the cars behind ploughed in, including yourself. I mean, because there's no vision of the actual start of it all. So what happened from where you were?
Well, what happened, I mean, back then there was no yellow lights or any of that. Flag marshals had the yellow flags. They'd had a coming together at the top of the hill, and they'd bounced off each other basically, and the track was blocked just where the old Castrol Tower. What's it called these days?
I don't even know what it's painted in these days.
Yeah, anyway, that's
still there,
that's what it was.
But there was no sand trap to collect the cars. There was nothing. It was just a bank.
No, that's
it?
right.
Yeah.
You know, I remember coming roaring around there, and the next thing there was just nowhere to go, and so I sort of used the skill and daring that I could possess in about a split second, and I sort of hit reasonably head on, head on enough, I suppose. And of course, then all the rest then came roaring along behind me, and then they all started spearing in, and that was the end of it there.
So who did you hit? Did you hit the wall or the cars?
No, I hit two cars. They were sort of I suppose you'd say edged together a little, and then of course that just stopped. Everything stopped then, and then what happened? The car caught fire. The fuel line was something in the inlet. And there was. And of course, back in those days, you didn't have the officialdom amount of people that you've got today. And they all talk about the drunks on the top of the hill. Let me tell you, thank God for the drunks on the hill. They're the ones that got me through the window.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So anyway, that's how it was.
Was there any lingering effects from that crash for you?
Well, actually, I raced the following weekend in Tasmania in my sports sedan.
Jeez.
And the only problem I ever had, I really still got a problem, a little bit one of my eyes, because what happened, my brother's a doctor, as I said earlier. Evidently, when you're going like forward motion really quickly and stop, your eyeballs all keep going forward.
Yeah, right.
And because they're in fluid, it bursts, and it bursts all the blood vessels in the back of their eye. And so the vision was a little impaired at that stage. But anyway, we got over all that. And
the car stops, your body stops, but your eye
does it exactly right. It's very common.
Yeah. There's so many topics. One of the ones that we've talked about in the office that one of the boys wanted to ask too. You mainly race touring cars, saloon cars, stuff with roofs, but you did have it go in an open wheeler somewhere along the line, didn't you?
I drove a BDG. A Formula Pacific, I think they were called at this time.
They were in the early 80s.
Yeah, it was a car that the guy used to lease it out occasionally. Can't even think of his name now. I drove that at Sandown, actually. The only thing I couldn't really get used to was the stopping ability, because the cars I've been driving, you'd brake at 100 yards or 150 or whatever. This thing, you could brake at 10 feet. So it took me a while to get my mind around that, but actually I quite enjoyed it.
Did need a boat anchor to pull it up on the way in. One of the cars that, there's so many cars. I'm looking here in the models that are surrounding us that your teams run over the years, but there's so many cars that you raced over the years. One we haven't talked about, we talked about Gagan before, but you had the Gagan Monaro there for a while, which is just being restored at the moment, back to the Craven Mild livery that he ran it in.
Well, I sold that car.
I've got a feeling you didn't sell it for what it's worth today.
No, you won't. To quote one of Dick's favourite words, right? No good looking backwards, all you get's a stiff neck.
Correct. And I think you'd probably cry if you looked at the values of some of those cars, but you had to sell one to get to the next thing. Of
course you did. That was exactly how it was.
Yeah.
Today people walk in here and they see all those 5,000s we've got and all the other things, and they think, gee whiz, there's money here unlimited. Well, today there is a lot of money here, thanks to my business skills and also to a good sponsor group. But back then, you couldn't get your next car or even get your next race meeting until you sold something. Now, whether that was some parts or a car or whatever, that's how you did it. And that was exactly how you did it.
What's the most desperate thing that you did to go car racing? Was there anything... You hear of people doing mortgaging houses and going to the nth degree to buy this part or engine or upgrade. I get the impression that you didn't quite have to go that far because it wasn't quite at that level for you.
No. Well, no. Look, I enjoyed what I was doing, but I also was building my business, and I wanted to make sure that I did things as a reasonably good common sense level. But actually, probably the one thing that sticks in my mind, when I bought the Alpha 155, the Tarquini car.
The Super Tourer, yeah.
Yeah, the Super Tourer. I went to France, actually, to buy some spares from a guy who had bits and pieces for sale over there, and Kay came with me. And I had to come back for some reason, and I bought a whole lot of engine bits. So I bought a couple. I went down to the local Market Square and bought half a dozen old, these little carry-on bags, because the airline thing was a bit different then. I mean, they had X-rays, but not what they've got today. So I disassembled all these bits and gave Kay all these little carry-on bags and a couple of bags to check in. And we had engine bits and con rods and cylinder heads. How she ever carried them is beyond me. But anyway, that wasn't a desperate thing because I could afford to do what I did. But the fact that we just got them here because we needed to get them here.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was all part of it all.
I love too the 635 BMWs, because you had for a time the Jim Richards JPS car that you had in that Bob Jane T-Mart's orange livery, and they were beautiful cars.
Yeah. Sad I crashed it.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Is it Oran Park, I think, one day?
That was Oran Park, yeah.
Well, let's not talk about all the crashes, guys. Let's talk about the good stuff as well. There's lots of good stuff to talk about. You mentioned something earlier too, Thunderdome.
Yep.
We get so many people who listen to our podcast and follow our stuff who loved the NASCAR racing and the Oscar racing and the HQs and all the stuff that used to go on out there. Tell me about racing around there, because it was totally different to anything that most races had ever done.
It is totally different. I mean, I'd always followed it on the television because I personally think NASCAR racing is one of the greatest. I mean, a lot of people say you're going round and round in a circle. Let me tell you right now, it is bloody hard.
Yeah.
Now, I only drove an Oscar, so they're nowhere near the same speed. But let me tell you, those NASCAR drivers are the best. People say,
a whole other thing.
Yeah. Anyway, I decided to have a crack at that. And at that stage, Stephen Richards was driving here in the Formula Ford. And also then we got because what happened, Bob got some reasonably good TV for the Thunderdome. So we went out there with a couple of Oscars.
I'm guessing prize money was one of the attractions.
Prize money was okay, yeah.
Cash,
that's right. You could pay your way reasonably well. And, anyway, that's how it all happened.
Just driving around that joint at 200 and something k's an hour with one in front, one behind, one to the side, wall up there.
Well, you get giddy.
Yeah, I was going to say, how did you adapt to it?
Seriously, because you do not know where you are. It's like shutting your eyes and then walking around in a circle and open and say, where am I?
Yeah.
But after you'd done it a little bit, you got to know some of the markings on the walls and that, because you sort of got to know. But I tell you right now, it was very, very really intense concentration.
Was that whole scene, do you think, 10 years too early?
I don't think it was 10 years too early. I think the timing was right, but I just think that obviously it was driven purely by Bob. And, of course, he probably didn't have the support. Well, he had the support of the competitors, but certainly I think, there was other I suppose you'd say, well, Bob never got on well with Cams. I think that was I don't think that needs
I don't think that's
elaborating on that. So there was never a really acceptance of it, but I think it could have been it could have progressed much. I was going to say whether it could or could not. I think the numbers, the competitor numbers, he couldn't keep bringing the Yanks out to do it because you just couldn't keep to afford to do that. But I think it would have eventually got its own quality of drivers where it could have progressed and gone quite well. But anyway, really sad that, because when you think about all the things they spend money on to restore, I mean, that was the only one outside of Australia. And we talk about history this and history that. No different to Sandown. I mean, they should talk about, the Thunderdome and Sandown, and those places should never go.
No, I drive past the Thunderdome regularly. My wife's from Bendigo, so we're always going backwards and forwards. Yeah. Not so much lately because we haven't been allowed to go anywhere.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
When you look at the place now, it hosts a World Championship touring car race on the link track. Yeah. Some of the big NASCAR names who were big at the time or became bigger later on race. It's the first NASCAR race outside of North America. So that's right. It's part of NASCAR history on the other side of the world. It's a cool thing. So it's a little bit sad to see what it's like.
It is very sad when you look at the condition it's in.
Yeah. Gold Coast Indy. Didn't you get a win there, or did you nearly get a win there?
No, I actually got a win there. I should have had two, actually.
Tell me why you didn't get two.
Well, you should ask Jim Richards, right?
What did Jim do?
No, I did it. Because he, as I say, Stephen was driving with us at the time, and I think Jim was also driving one of our Oscars from time to time. Anyway, we're at the Gold Coast. It was one of the support races, and we're blazing along. And back then, the speedway rules had the white flag. They'd wave the white flag with a lap to go,
which was different to the road course racing.
That's
which
right.
Is slow car.
Yeah, that's right. But
Yeah.
also, of course, I was that excited. I'm leading the race. I'm no way, I can't get beaten. Now there's the checkered flag. I can see it. And we were like a foot apart, and I'm just that 1 foot in front of him. So I've got marginally off the throttle, and we've gone over the start finish line. It was actually the white flag, not the checkered flag.
One to go.
One to go. Anyway. So, but funnily enough, the next year, nearly the same thing happened, but I actually did win it the following year.
That's better. That's better. You're right at that, Ron.
Happy ending.
Yes, true. You've still got an Oscar.
It's upstairs up there, yeah.
Yeah. Is that a...
That was a brand new car.
It
we
never
built.
raced?
No, never raced. That was
Fresh.
going to be our final fresh car ready to, so I could be a champion.
And then they stopped Oscar.
Yeah, well, they stopped the Thunderdome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
just sitting up there in all its glory.
one owner never raced.
No,
still
that's
virtually
exactly
there.
right. Well, actually, it hasn't raced. That's the car. Remember when they did that, Barry organised that thing for my birthday? It was my 60th birthday.
Oh,
or 70th
up at
birthday.
Queensland
Up at
Raceway.
Queensland Raceway.
With all the cars.
Yeah, Jim Richards actually took that. Well, we took the car up there and he drove it. Yeah.
Barry's yelling out from his office 70th. I think
70.
you just tried to wind yourself back to 60.
Anyway, so it blows around up there.
So that's its one and only run.
That's it.
That's
it.
It's the probably it would be the least kilometre used Oscar in Australian
Exactly.
racing history. That's pretty cool. You talked about the 2-litre, the Alpha, and getting the bits back here earlier. Tell me about, because there was a little period there where Steve Richards obviously was here. He was doing Oscar.
He was here for quite a while.
He was here for a long time.
Formula Forward, yeah.
Yeah.
Because he was doing an apprenticeship as a aircraft mechanic in Moorabbin, and then when this came here, then he started helping, because we had his Formula Ford. We had 2 Formula Fords here. I forget who else was here, and Bobby Smith was Stephen Richards' mechanic at the time. Anyway, so they were here. Sorry, I'll just cut you off there.
I think Noski was floating around.
Yes, he
Valvoline
was.
cars
That's
at the
right.
time as
That's
well with
right.
Steve. So that's
Yeah.
94.
Yeah.
And then 2-litre in 95 with the Alpha. So that's kind of... So
The Honda was in there too.
There, the
Yeah.
Nissan was there as
Actually,
well.
that Honda story, that's not a bad story because Stephen Richards, I went to England to buy the Honda.
Which came, I think it was a British touring car factory.
Yeah, then the
Car from
Primera
Steve.
came. We had the Primera as well.
Yep.
So we had the Alpha originally, then we had the Honda, then we had the Primera.
Yep.
Yeah.
And at the time, the 2-litre thing's bubbling along, but that's where GRM first goes touring car racing.
Yes.
But the V8 thing came, and then you ended up doing both.
Yeah, that's right. Well, what happened, of course, everything about sponsorship was, centred around television. If you could get some reasonable television, you could get some reasonable money from sponsors. And the 2-litre series got, I think it was Channel 10 actually.
It was, yeah.
That picked it up initially, and it got some reasonable TV. So we went with that. And that was another big positive for the Thunderdome, of course, because I think they were on Channel 10 as well.
Yeah, they were 7 for a fair while, and then they went to 10 a bit later on, with a bit of SBS, I think, along the way too. So
anyway, so that's how it all sort of rolled on. And, but during that period, we then bought our first Actually, we bought that first car from Gibson Motorsport.
correct, that's right.
That was a
VR.
VR, yes, correct. And then from then on, we started building our own cars, but that was there. And Stephen Richards was driving that car. Then Tander came, I think.
He came along, Bargwana came along.
Yeah, that's right,
Yeah.
exactly.
The 2-litre stuff, though, I reckon it was a bit before its time, because here we are now with TCR.
Hey, that
It's a
Peter
bit more
Adderton,
relevant
that
to the
Peter
market.
Adderton is no dope. I'll tell you what.
Because everyone forgets that you have a history from the 2-litre days.
Yeah.
Because everyone remembers the Boost Mobile
Yeah,
era
that's
of him
right.
sponsoring you here. But, so it was Peter, Terry Morris, Paul's dad, and Alan Gow with
Exactly.
the Toker Australia.
That's right, exactly. Actually, I saw Gow in England a couple of years ago when I was over there visiting my daughter who was living there at the stage. I had lunch with him, actually.
Yeah.
He hasn't changed. He's topping up, driving the roller around there. He's got the big fur coat. He was flying. He's a bloody good bloke.
Those 2-litre days were really good. There were some really good races
There was.
back in those days.
There
the
was.
BMWs, the Audis, Steve Richards in whichever car.
They probably
he was
just
in.
needed a few more of them, really.
It was probably about 5 or 6
Yep.
short of.
Yep.
It was never going to capture the wider, broader public
I
imagination.
think it may have had we had more cars. But anyway, that didn't happen. We've got what we've got.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I remember that Alpha ended up being sold and barrel rolling one day down at Phillip Island with its
really?
next
Yeah.
owner.
I sold that guy to a guy. He had a business called the Queensland Gun Exchange.
David Auger.
Yeah, David Auger.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he raced it for a long, long time. I think he had to re-shell it after it ended up barreling down the road. Steve Richards
Actually, I wouldn't mind finding that car.
Well, I know where it is. It's somewhere overseas.
Yeah.
Somewhere overseas. Steve Richards had a big shot in the Honda up at Lakeside.
Oh, yeah,
Remember
he sure
that?
did. I do. I remember going to the hospital with him in the ambulance.
Yeah, that was nasty. That was nasty. Yeah. So when the crossover started, so you're doing V8, you're doing 2 litre, different weekends, but remember that they at some points they clicked together. So there was a weekend where you went, we need a V8
Jason
driver.
Bright.
Correct.
That's where that all started. He drove our supercar in Tassie because Stephen Richards was at Lakeside. I think that's right. That might have even been that weekend that crash occurred. I think
that was the next year.
Was it?
Yeah. Same track, same car, same guy. Yeah.
But I think that's pretty much how that happened.
What's been... At that point, did GRM start to become more of a professional, full-on, full-time focused race team rather than, the Oscar stuff was good. It was just, everything was a step. And then V8 Supercars, of course, was just going gangbusters. Late 90s, early noughties was where that took off.
Yeah, well, the main reason this all started is because I like racing a car. And really, what happened then, financially it was difficult, but then as time progressed and we were able to seek, or not only seek, but acquire sensible sponsorship relationships that could attract drivers and reasonable funds to be able to present the cars and grow the business from there. That's really what started to happen. And just trying to think, there was no, did we have a real plan? No, other than I think we got on well with certain people. We were able to get those people on board and build the business from there. That's pretty much how it happened.
It's been always talked about young drivers, you giving people opportunities, not just young drivers, but young mechanics and engineers.
There's a
and
lot of
people
young
who've developed
mechanics,
all the way up through the ranks here. Your team managers have been young guys over the journey. But was there a preconceived plan somewhere along the line that you went, we're going to provide opportunity here. Other people aren't doing it. We'll do it.
Oh, the driver thing, certainly, yes. And I think the staff thing came about because, Shirl, he did his apprenticeship at our Nissan dealership.
Was he about 12 at the time?
When he started his apprenticeship, he was 14. No, he was, seriously.
He was young, wasn't he? Yeah.
And he completed his apprenticeship and he did a really good job with that. And then he came, and then a couple of others came from that background. But the driver thing, Stephen Richards really was the first of them. And then, of course, Garth, Bargs. I just like that, the energy and the sort of work and get it to happen attitude rather than say, we've tried that before and that didn't work and this is too hard, There's too much of that in our business, really. Sometimes you do make wrong decisions by being a bit experimental, but I just find those younger guys, you can drive them with a bit of energy and they'll drive energy into you because they're enthusiastic about wanting to get it done.
That's a good way to look at it, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Did that become part of... it's become part of almost the signature of this place and the list of young drivers, and more often than not they worked out or that they achieved things, and sometimes they went off and moved on to other teams and things like that later on down the track. But that's probably there's two things that probably stand out here. It's a bit wrong, but so many people say GRM punching above their weight. It kind of annoys me over time because I think
it does me too, to be honest.
Well above you're in your weight category.
Yeah, that's right.
But often some of those ones along the way didn't turn out, but many of them did, and did other things.
I think most of the ones did turn out. I think that we didn't have too many failures, and although I suppose people laugh about it, and I probably still laugh at it. Obviously, I tipped Win-Cup out, so
I was going to.
No. Look, hey.
But at the time, you're just judging it on what you saw.
It's exactly right. Look, personally, I liked him as a good young guy, and he was just seriously, he couldn't concentrate to the sort of level that I needed in our team at that stage. And I look at him now and I talk to him, hey, good on him. I was wrong and he was right.
And here he is about to finish as a full-time
driver
with, a bazillion race wins and championships and
that's it.
All that sort of stuff. So it's funny how it all works out. One of the things from along the way that we get asked about a lot is, and I can see the models here, the Monaro program. Is that the most... the Volvo program was special, the Monaro program was special. The whole process of being right in that from the very start, from the first design of that car right through to winning the 24-hour race 2 years in a row, does that stand out to you as a bigger achievement than winning the 1000 a couple of years before that? A lot of people would be surprised by that.
Absolutely, no doubt.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, what you've got to... I mean, we had 9 or 10 people working here in that era, and we were running the Super... Well, and that wasn't the Supercars, it was the Touring Car Championship in Supercars. And we built those cars. Now, in fairness, John Stevenson, who was the motorsport manager at Holden, helped us a lot, with the design and that. But we had to do it. We had to do it. And we talk about design and engineers and things. So we did that with a, cheese platter, a couple of glasses of red wine, and a bloody drawing board. I mean, no one had a computer. We didn't know what a computer was, So when I look at that, and also to continue racing our supercars, or our touring cars, build those cars, test those cars and get them to last for 24 hours, that is no doubt the most satisfying to me. Now, perhaps not to others, but certainly to me, I think that's the most rewarding thing that I've accomplished.
Does it frustrate you? I mean, we see it a lot from people who say, it was like taking a gun to a knife fight. The things were so much better than other things. But I always counter that by saying, well, if a pro Porsche had come to the 24-hour with 4 factory drivers, they would have given you a massive run for your money. But no one was able to put together a program or a driving combination that could lay a punch on the drives you had. Exactly
right. And we read the rule book, as it were, as to best that we could get out of, and we knew. We hadn't been racing in 24-hour races, but I had enough knowledge of people. I knew the Snitzer boys pretty well. I'd spoken to them about a lot of things, and I knew what we had to be able to design and build and just keep the lid on it for 24 hours rather than get all excited about doing a hot lap here and a fast lap. And the beauty of that is drivers back then would do what they were told.
Yeah.
Because really, I know, look, I accept the fact that they want to be quicker than the next bloke, but that was never going to win you the race. And I think that we were fortunate to be able to monitor that, put it in play. And certainly the next year when we ran 2 of them, we had 8 drivers. But anyway, as I say, to me, that was certainly one of the most personally satisfying thing I've ever done in motorsport.
How was it when Brock turned up to drive? Because he came the next year and drove the Nations Cup in the red car. Nathan Pretty was in the yellow car, which kind of became his car, really, because he was more the full-time guy in it than anyone else. But how did that year with Brock go running?
Actually, Brock and I, no problem. Like, Brock and I were around forever. Like, it wasn't an issue for Brock and I, The problem you had with Brock is there's so many people hanging off Brock, right? So it wasn't just dealing with Brock, it was all the people that wanted to be a part of Brock. But, personally, I quite enjoyed travelling with him, having fun with him, because that's how it was. But, there's certain personalities that just didn't work or wanted things to work differently for Peter Brock than what it would work for the whole team, and that wasn't going to work for me.
You love those Monaro so much you built another one.
Well,
it's had so much interest, that new car.
I know, but, of course what happened, we've got all this COVID stuff. The fact is, like I mentioned before, we've got a lot more than 9 people here these days, but when all this struck and we had nothing, or when I say nothing, we had small jobs to do with no racing going on, and I said to Barry, we don't need to be putting people off here. We need to, try and find some things to do. And it was always sort of our intention at some stage to perhaps build another one of those cars.
At the time in the period.
Yes, when we built the first 2. And we sort of had a handful of bits, but not many, because we'd sold stuff off and it was so long ago. And then when we decided to do it, because there was a lot of interest in that yellow car, and I mean the yellow car will never go, it's here forever. And Barry said, well, maybe we should build another one of those cars and eventually recoup our money by keeping everyone employed, get it done, and that's how it'll happen. Anyway, sure enough, that's exactly how it did happen. But funnily enough, Barry we ended up with a second-hand body shell from someone. We'd no sooner got that, and someone rang us and said, "Oh, here you're building another Monaro. I've got a brand new body shell. Would you like that?" Anyway, to cut a long story short, we bought that, and then in the meantime, we'd accumulated another couple of body shells. So you never know. we might build another one.
It might be the last.
Hey, let's hope there's no more bloody COVID, because the world and certainly sporting and activities like that do not need that again.
No, we've done that. We don't need to try that again.
we do
Although
not.
you could just about end up with every colour. You've got a yellow one, a red one, you got a cream one, you got a purple one, a blue one.
Well, that was a bone
green
of contention, of course, because I wanted
You wanted purple, didn't you?
I wanted purple. My first early model, OL606.
But who talked you down?
Barry.
Ugh.
Well, a combination perhaps of Barry and Les, because they're cunning little bastards. They didn't work on me intently, but they just bit by bit just chipped
death by
away.
1,000
Exactly,
cuts,
that's right.
A couple of little ones along
And then,
the
of
way.
course, the original Kevin Bartlett, it wasn't Bruce McPhee, Kevin Bartlett, hey, Baz. Yeah. Kevin Bartlett who? Spencer Martin.
Oh,
Yeah.
Kevin Bartlett, Spencer
The
Martin,
colour-
the HDT Monaro.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that ended up that colour. That's how it ended up that way.
Luckily, it didn't have the singeing from the side of the original car that caught on fire at Sandown. Went backwards through the fence, I think, when it lost its brakes.
Anyway, so that's how it ended up the colour. And to be honest, I think I was quite happy with the end result.
Oh, it was great. I mean, it had so much attention and people loved it.
Well, and when I looked at the end result, like we are so fortunate here to have the group of workers here that we've got. Like I said before, the money's important, but you've just got to have some rewarding projects and things that give you a bit of self-satisfaction rather than just a big bag of dough at the end of each week.
Well, when I think about it, and some of them are sitting here up on your mezzanine in the workshop, you've done other cool stuff, not just the racing, the supercars and the Monaro and stuff like that. The Thunder Ute, a lot of people have forgotten that. That was a supercar running gear in a ute that became a ride car and did all sorts of stuff.
Well, actually, funny enough, because, we mentioned about engineers and engineering and things like all of that, and I suppose it might be opportune to mention about Pier Luigi Orsi.
Yeah.
And because we'd never had engineers here, there was, like as I say, there was Shirl, who was an apprentice mechanic from our Nissan dealership. There was myself, who was a diesel mechanic. We had Negger, Michael Exel, who was our engine man. And then we had Jono in the fab shop. That was the basis of our people. And we didn't have an engineering degree between us, no way. But we knew about mechanical things. We knew how to build things that would last. And I think we'd shown that was the case. But bit by bit, over a period of time, people started approaching us, wanting us to do jobs and to do work for them. And I could see that, I don't understand all that CAD design or any of that other stuff. And I got no idea at all. And so I'd had this young fellow who'd sent me a letter. He was a engineering student, a mechanical engineering student at a university in France. And there he'd met a young girl who was an Australian girl whose parents happened to live in Burwood. He was a Frenchman. No, he's actually a Colombian, but he spoke fluent French. And anyway, to cut a long story short, he wrote to me a few times wanting to know would we give him a...
And this is like 2000 sort of period, wasn't it?
Yeah. Would he sort of, he'd fallen in love with this girl. He wanted to come and live in Australia. Would we sponsor him and data? Anyway, to cut a long story short, what happened... I wrote back to him and I said, look, if you're coming out for Christmas holidays to visit your girlfriend's parents, come and say hello. And if there's any chance, then, we'll see whether we can do anything from there. And actually it was the most wonderful interview for a job with anyone I've ever had because, he was that keen, I'm sure, to get this job, and I'd say his parents were not wealthy people, but reasonably intelligent, well-heeled, and I'd say they drummed it into him. You're going for a job interview, you've got to look like you're serious about the job interview. And this is when we were based in Glen Waverley at the back of the Nissan dealership. And anyway, I'm waiting there, and this guy arrives, and he was only a small in stature, Pierre. He was probably only about maybe 5'3" or something like that, and quite a skinny fellow. But a bright eye, a bit like a horse. If a horse got a bright eye, you got half a chance. So anyway, he had a bright eye, and he came in, and he'd obviously been and bought himself a suit and a shirt and a tie and a pair of shiny shoes for the job interview. and fair dinkum, the suit would have fitted you. And the shirt.
Which, by the way, I'm 6'4".
I never forgot this. He's walked into the place and I knew he felt self-conscious about it, but he'd just done what he thought he had to do to get this job. That's how much this girl, I reckon, meant to him. And he came and he's got the collar done up, right, but it's out here somewhere. And the ties, he's tried to do the knot in the tie, and fair dinkum, it was just all over the place. And
but he got the job.
Well, he did get the job. So we had a bit of a chat, and one thing led to another. To cut a long story short, yes, he did get the job. And I did comment on his shiny shoes. So I think he felt that he hadn't wasted his money because he did. Anyways, he was here for years and years and years. And that really started because I mentioned we were getting this inquiry about doing work for other people and making things and doing this. And, I was street smart enough to know that we needed people that understood that. There's no good me talking about a ball paint hammer and a 12-inch shifter to some guy who's been, to some whiz-bang engineering place, and they're talking about CAD designs and, they think, well, this old goes, he's off in Mars, Anyway, so that's how it all came about. And then of course, he then introduced that mentality here where we used to employ a couple of young trainees every year out of university, like the second or third last year when they were doing the university, they'd come here. And most of those guys, some of them are still here, some of them have been on and gone to other teams. But Cowboy, who you knew, who ran the place for us for years, he was one of those.
Big Dean, yeah?
Yeah, Dean. I mean, that's how it all happened. And I've got to say, whilst I still perhaps favour the more analogue approach, because I just don't believe that all those buttons pushing that.
Do you know how to turn a computer on?
No, I do not.
That establishes the line then, okay.
No, but I don't believe what the computer tells me most of the time. And, of course, that's where Richard Holloway and I used to, or Krusty or the Owl, disagreed because they love all that stuff.
They love the squiggly lines.
Yeah, next time you're talking, ask him about the weather forecast.
I will.
Right.
How's that going to go for me?
Well, what happens when we'd go to the race meetings somewhere, we'd be discussing, because I can't believe these race teams, they've got all this stuff on the weather, the this and the that, but they can never work out when it's going to rain. And, this particular day, I said to Krusty, I'm going to go out the back there, there's a paddock full of horses, and I'll tell you right now, if their asses are facing the west, it's going to rain. I went out there, and sure enough, here's the horses all queued up again, the asses due west. Within an hour, it's pissing rain, right?
So what you really need if you're a race team, forget the fancy weather station and the internet and the Bureau of Meteorology
actually
app.
Remind me.
Just bring a horse with you to the track next time.
No, just find a paddock where there's sun.
See which way it goes.
I know, and I'll tell you what. Anyway, that actually reminds me of a very, very funny story with Pierre, because Draffo, back to Draffo again. Draffo, as I say, was the best practical joke you would ever find. And this is when Pierre, we ended up with a weather station on our truck, which, everyone had them, but I'd never heard of this. And the next thing we've got this thing on the top of our transporter. And anyway, Draffo's gone up there on the ladder and snuck up at the top of the roof with a bottle of water.
I think I know where this is going.
And he's tipped all the water. I don't know how this thing works, but it must sense it somehow that there's water coming. So he's tipped water on this thing and then slid down and of course Pierre and all the honchos have gone into a spin inside the garage because all of a sudden the weather's coming, the rain's coming.
Pit now, wet tyres. It's just Draffo with a bottle of water on the roof of the truck. We talked about the Monaro program and there's so much love for that from the fans out there and from people who love your team. We've got to talk Volvo. How did that all start? Where did the wheels to Volvo begin? Okay,
what happened? That really started initially with the not the Dodge. What's that? The Chrysler. Because
I was going to ask you about that.
Okay, we'd spoken to Chrysler about a supercar program because we were trying to get a factory involvement of some kind.
Which at this stage, Holden and Ford are still in. This is early 2010s.
Yeah, Nissan I don't think had come in at that
quite.
stage. No.
They came in 2013 and Volvo came 14. So I have a vivid memory about that Chrysler stuff. Maybe that was 11, 12?
Yeah, well, what happened, we'd approached them and a girl that used to be in the PA department at Nissan, Lenore Fletcher, who I knew through the dealership days, was working for Chrysler. And we went and had a meeting with them and just discussed whether we could build a Chrysler supercar for the program, and we said we could do that. Anyway, in the meantime, we'd had some discussion with Volvo, just briefly, we'd had an approach. I think Cocco actually might have mentioned it to the Volvo dealer on the Gold Coast or something, who in turn sort of ended up at us, could we do it? And the answer was yes, we could. Would we like to do it? Yes, we would. Anyway, what happened, they were sort of humming and ahhing, not wanting to know about it. Then all of a sudden they got a sniff of the fact that we were maybe going to do this Chrysler deal. So then all of a sudden, it was just amazing, like someone had turned the tap on. The next thing, we'd done the deal. And of course then...
and was the Chrysler thing actually close?
Oh, no, it was Dinky Die. Oh,
Yeah.
no, but the guy, what happened, that's the guy that ended up getting the shop because he poured all the money. Remember, I can't think of his name, but he got, I think he got...
there was a bit of issues.
Yes,
going on
with
Chrysler
financial...
various deals.
Anyway, to cut a long story short, yes, I mean, they were quite interested in it. But then, as I say, then at that stage we didn't have any real firm commitment from Volvo. But once they heard of this,
so a little bit of competitive pressure and a little
that's
bit of
right.
fear of missing out.
Exactly.
Got them in. Yeah.
Exactly.
So in a way, we could say that Chrysler helped get Volvo in.
Well, yeah, you would say that.
Yeah.
Anyway, look, it all worked out for the best. So what happened very quickly, and things really turned around. We sort of designed the car, got all the stuff, and by this stage I'm in charge of CAD design. I've got more computers fed in than the Mars orbital space station. I'm sitting at home every night computerising everything and just how we're going to get this to work.
Right.
Anyway, so what happened, by this stage we had assembled quite a sensible group of young engineers and people that could design all that. So we designed the car and then... Cowboy, myself and Krusty went to Sweden and met with the powers to be over there. And the deal was that we would design and build the car and they would design and build the engine. That's pretty much how it was done. And Matus Everson, who was their engine man and still is their engine man, a really smart and a really terrific bloke, he was all part of that program. And of course there was that many fingers in the pie, not because you had Polestar, which was owned by Christian Dale, but there are other parties involved in the... Polestar was a very different organisation. I mean, you never really knew who was the boss or who wasn't the boss, because every time you'd have a meeting there'd be a different person there, and they'd all have a different title. And... of course, we're not strong on titles here.
No.
But anyway, what the facts are that it all worked. They designed the engines, we designed the car, we built the car, we raced the car, and had success. And how great was that, hey?
It's still talked about. When the Volvo's been gone for 5 odd years now in supercars, but whenever we run a photo on socials or there's a story online about where the cars are now, or remember when McLaughlin did this or that happened, or the retro liveries, it goes crazy. People absolutely love.
Yeah.
I mean, it was different, but it was successfully different.
It
wasn't just different at the back of the field.
And of course, I think the least likely person to be racing a Volvo would be us. A Dodge Phoenix or a Plymouth Barracuda or something. Yes.
300C fat thing. I could picture.
Well, yeah, that's right.
But
anyway, it was an extremely, as I say, the 24-hour program is the best thing I've ever done, but this is a close second.
Because it's not just the fact that you've been given these cars and then you go well. It started from the start with a manufacturer deal, with designing it from scratch, with all the aero testing, the engine work, putting it all together, and then achieving on the track. And then obviously this kid McLaughlin went pretty well too.
Yeah, he did.
He did okay. He did his bit as part of it all. And people are going to talk about, no matter what he does in IndyCar, what he did in supercars with winning Bathurst and championships, they're going to remember the Jandal. They're always going to remember that interview. That launched him into the national sporting conscience beyond just the motor racing fraternity. It was huge.
He'll go car in the IndyCars. He's smart. He'll take his time to get it right rather than go and be a hero in 5 minutes flat.
Yeah. What do we not know about Scott McLaughlin that you can tell us? You've got a little story about Scotty that you can share with us that most people might not know?
Oh, look, he and I had a very good relationship. I mean, look, I really... he was just he was very young when he came here, but like he could drive. He could drive. And I think the biggest thing that really sticks in my mind about him, he had great self disciplines. He had a lot of respect for everybody, whether that be the bloke sweeping the floor or the managing director of the sponsors company. And he never tried to be anything he wasn't. He's very natural. He could talk to people, albeit a bit sort of rough around the edge. Well, not even rough. He was quite polished, but he was sort of young and immature.
Yeah.
But that was good. That wasn't a bad thing. I saw that as a big positive, and you should never want to change that.
He hadn't quite been Penske-fied at that point. I mean, they all become a bit corporate when they go to Penske. That's
well,
just
when
how
they
it
go
is.
to the US, they do. Because
That's
exactly.
That's just how it is there. That's just how it is.
Of course.
It'll
Eventually happen there, but let's hope not too soon.
Let's hope. There were some wins along the way. I mean, he pushed Triple Eight in one of those championship years.
Absolutely.
That was probably Garth had pushed Scaife years before for the championship. McLaughlin had pushed Whincup and Lowndes, who were kind of the benchmark guys there.
Yep.
But I just love the love that's for that program and for those cars. And so many of the fans are saddened by the fact that they're not here. We can't look at one. They're over in Sweden with Polestar.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a shame that but it's the memories that we're going to keep on talking about that kind of
exactly.
keep it all going, which is cool. The Chrysler thing, though, not many people were across that.
I'll tell you what, that was seriously very, very close.
Yeah. Oh, well, if we didn't have that, then we wouldn't have had Volvo. And we
That's right, exactly. And
so,
to be frank, with no disrespect to the Chrysler, I think the Volvo ended up being, it was just the right shaped car for the program. And I've got to say to Matthias, he did an amazing job with that engine. He really
it was
did.
ace. Because it was a Yamaha engine, wasn't
it?
It
was.
4 and a bit litre. Yeah.
Sort of early into not early, about midway, they started experimenting with some bearing issues and things, and we started to have some engine problems. But all in all, he did an amazing job with those engines.
Yeah, ripping things. We have some friends in our podcast who help support what we do. Right. So the motorsporttrader.com is a website that deals in all sorts of memorabilia and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
Now, what's your most cherished bit of motorsport memorabilia? I know you're not mega sentimental, but is there anything in this joint that you go, we've got to make sure we save that? Is it a trophy, a car, an item from the past? Is there a piece that you go, that's the thing that I like the most?
Well, look, I don't think there's anything really that I would say that's my special. I've got to keep that. What happens, and I'd need to go at the back and do it, there's a couple of old containers out the back, and over the years everything's just got thrown in there and it's got forgotten. And I was in there the other day because when I say the other day, probably about a year ago, because we dug some stuff out of there to see what bits we did have left to try and put this new car together. And I found an old national cash register that I'd bought at a clearing sale on some farm in the back of the bush somewhere, and I'd forgotten all about it. But I remember oiling it up and wrapping it up and saying, gee, I want to keep that forever. Today, it's quite to me, that's something that's probably more special than all these trophies.
Yeah, something a bit different. That's cool.
But also in there, I found some photos early on of my horses.
Yeah.
And with Chrissy, who's now 32, like when she was a year old or 18 months, I remember there's a photo of her and I with, I think it might have been a horse I had called Main Report, who was actually quite a good horse too. And
was he a headliner? If he
was
called Main Report?
No, he was seriously. Nice. No, he was a very good horse. And there's a photo of her, and the horse is sort of like she's about the size of this microphone, and the horse is about the size of this building, and its head's just nudging at her. And I'm thinking to myself, gee whiz, this could end in tears, but it didn't. Those are the things to me that are perhaps the things that I get more satisfaction out of than the glitzy things, to be honest.
The personal connection
stuff.
I know. Totally understand. In the lead up to doing this interview, we put the call out to our followers on social media,
right?
Which I know you know what podcasts are, computers are, and social media are.
Well, I'm learning. I know what a podcast is now.
Yeah, you're on one. You're big time. The National Motor Racing Museum up at Bathurst, which of course the Monaro has spent a lot of time out over the years. The Wildcard supercar from last year's up there at the moment as well, on display from memory. So there's been a bunch of your cars go up and back up there over the journey that fans have been able to have a look at. It's open 6 days a week, not Tuesdays. Don't go on Tuesday. There's no one there.
Actually, that has got a lot of good stuff there.
A lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah. It's got Des West's
Humpy Holden?
race suit. No, the race suit that I bought at an auction with the cigarette burns in it. I remember buying that, and I go to when you go up there, or whoever's going there, listeners or viewers or whatever you do, go up there and have a look at Des West's driving suit. You'll see those cigarette burns. He was a prolific smoker.
Mid-race.
Anywhere. And, of course, he'd drop the cigarettes on his leg or wherever, and, of course, it'd burn a hole in his driving suit.
Not very fireproof then if you're doing that. They present our Couch Racer questions, Baz. I'm looking down and I saw it from Barry. That's why I said Baz. But the first one that we've got here is from a bloke, Stephen. I think it's Stephen Richards, by the way. I think it's the Stephen Richards.
Oh, the Stephen.
The one and the only, the former GRM driver.
Right.
He says, ask Garry about how fun the days were in the Oscar and what about the poem that he wrote
about John Faulkner.
Park race with John Faulkner. What was the story with your poetry?
Actually, I quite like poetry. I like sort of old traditional poetry, but I did write a poem. This goes back to the Thunderdome days. In fact, I think I've got it upstairs. I'll send you a copy of it.
All right.
It was all about John Faulkner, who was the king of the Thunderdome, and he could bloody well drive John Faulkner, but he saw Stephen Richards, a young upstart. He was never going to beat him, and he was out there puffing his chest about he's going to play hell with hot stick, and, it wouldn't matter about what Stephen Richards does, because I'm John Faulkner and he's never going to catch me. Anyway, so I wrote this great poem. It's called The Trophy. Actually, I better go. I've got it. I will send you. It's actually...
We have to get a copy of this now.
Yeah, it's quite a good verse, actually.
So was it a sledge?
Yes.
Right. It was a poem.
There's nothing wrong with a sledge.
No, nothing wrong with it. Sports.
That's
built
where they're
on
all too
competitive
soft today. Sledging should be mandatory. You should have to sledge.
You're penalised if you don't. You're out.
That's right.
All right, we'll get a copy of that for our
I think it's
viewers and our listeners. I might recite it one day in a special episode.
It's quite lengthy.
Oh, okay.
Because it goes through the Thunderdome. It eventually ends up at Oran Park because we had a street race there in the night.
I remember that under lights.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that.
Actually, the closing words are something about the Victor's Cup. It's a foregone conclusion. Don't bother talking to anyone else. Just hand it to me or something.
Because I think famously and we've had him on the podcast before, he made a comment on the radio or in a TV interview that put my name on the trophy, boys. We're going to win this
That's
tonight.
It, exactly.
And it didn't work out that way.
Right.
It's kind of like, celebrating a lap early when you see the white flag.
Yeah,
it never happens before.
Yeah. I mean, that's just totally dumb, isn't it?
Who would do that?
Only a dumbwit.
Yes. John Morris, who's a long-time photographer around the Australian motor racing scene, runs MPIX. Is there a personal favourite of all of your outfits that you wore from over the years? I know we touched on this earlier, but is there a personal favourite that you think's the best? The bowl of fruit was pretty good on the full drag kit in the Volvo days.
That was Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, wasn't it?
The bus trip to Bathurst. That was pretty good.
Yeah. Well, probably because of my bent sense of humour, I would have thought that the Bill Clinton was...
I knew you were going to say that.
Probably the...
How did I know you were going to say that? Well, how did I know?
Because you're probably aware that I have got a bent sense of humour.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. Justin Olden has got the next question. How difficult was the situation for you personally having to let Garth Tandy go when, of course, you had to make a change here? And he finished up. He said, look, I understand it's probably a business decision, but there probably wasn't a lot of choice in the matter. So
was this when the Stanaway situation? Oh, that was extremely difficult.
Mm. So Garth had, he'd been here for many years, gone away, come back, and then things changed here. So what was the scenario?
Well, there's probably no real scenario other than the fact was that we needed the funding to be able to keep the program going along in the direction that we as a team, not as individuals, needed to do. And I had to make that decision. And I made the decision. Mm.
Just a simple business decision. That's life.
It is.
It's how it is. Was it hard to have that chat with the big fella?
Very.
Yeah. Yeah. That's just life, isn't it? He won Bathurst last year, so it's kind of worked out okay for him. Hasn't been so bad.
Yes, it certainly has, and it certainly did.
I'm sure he's okay. Richie, Jade and Ricketts asked another question. So there was always going to be a Richie Stanaway question here. What was the story with him going home from the Gold Coast mid-race weekend? What was the go there?
Well, I think it's common knowledge what happened there. I mean, Richie Stanaway, I quite like the fellow, actually. He's very difficult to manage because he's a different person, but you've got to accept that. But there's certain regulations and rules that you need to have within your team, and that's whether it's a car racing team or a footy team or just a business team. And I made those points very clear to Richie at all times. And then when a matter that he should have addressed, which encompassed presenting himself to speak to the public at a point on the Gold Coast, he just decided that wasn't important enough to do. Well, the fact is it was important enough to do.
And you took the action that you felt was appropriate afterwards. Yep. There's some good ones here. Brett Douglas, anything you would have done differently in your motorsport career? I don't get the sense you're a regret type of guy, Gaz.
In motorsport career or in my life?
Oh, well, both, if you want to go even wider.
No, I don't think... There's nothing I would do any differently in my life than what I've done.
Can't change it now anyway.
Either way.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't matter if I could. I wouldn't want to because what I've done is what I've done, and I'm happy with what I've done.
Yep, I think it should be. Richard Hargraves, love to hear a bit about Clive Benson-Brown, Alan Brown and Peter Jansen. Well, how many hours have you got? There's probably a few stories there between those three.
Well, Clive Benson-Brown actually... The Disco Duck.
The Disco Duck, Soundwave Discos.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that all came about through Peter Jansen, funnily enough, because obviously Peter Jansen had realised the Disco Duck had a few bob. And
he was in every deal, wasn't he,
Jansen? He was.
Somehow.
Actually, he's a good bloke, Jansen. He's all right. Anyway, what happened, I think he was tied up with Larry.
Larry was doing some stuff with him, yeah.
With,
he bought a deal
Jansen.
at Team Car.
Yeah, that's right. And I think Jansen actually was driving with Larry that year. And then I think because... the Disco Duck had ended up with that. It was an ex-HRT car.
That's right, yeah.
And he wanted to drive it. And then I think Larry probably suggested to Jansen that maybe he should get me to drive the car with him. And that's how I met the guy. He's a beauty. He lived in that great big Aspro house up on the top of the hill there at top of Valinda. Beautiful old big mansion of a place. And he had an office girl, I can't think of her name now, but she was a beauty. She ran the Empire. And Bruce Garrett, who'd worked for Les Small, was working for me at the time, and he was sort of building the cars and doing the maintenance and one thing and another. And we'd get all the bills ready, and then she'd ring me up, and I'd go up there, and I'd get paid, and then I'd come back, and we'd work some more. It was one of those businesses that it was probably very asset poor, but very cash flow positive.
Yeah.
So I can imagine the disco doors were opening and shutting and the money was coming and going. Anyway, to be honest, I quite enjoyed my time with him. He could not drive very well, but he did okay for a amateur.
The hair would have got in the way, surely.
Well, no, that was all part of his persona. I didn't mind that, but he would at least do, when you were trying to help him with his driving skills, he would at least do what you tell him, which sometimes was to the detriment of what you told him. I remember once, I forget where we were, I think it might have been, actually it must have been at Bathurst, and I said to him something about some braking point somewhere. I'd been watching him and he was just braking far too early because, there was no data in those days. You just had to visually have a look and see how it worked. And I suggested to him he perhaps should go to this point on the track. And I think I must have marked something somewhere and said, when you get there, brake there, don't brake there. And of course, I went back and watched. He came flying down. I'll never forget. He just broke straight there and just disappeared into the bush.
I remember that vision, actually. I think it nearly wiped out John Harvey at the end of the straight there as well.
But anyway, look, that was all good. And in terms of, Alan Brown was just a general all-round good guy. Alan Brown had his business, liked motor racing. And as I say, Peter Jansen, I quite enjoyed his company. It was when he was living on top of the Windsor. You go up there and have a couple of Chardonnays or a couple of Reds, the good old brigade, Yeah, that was good.
Because you guys drove together, I think the last Group C Bathurst, the Cadbury Schweppes car in, I think it was 84.
Correct. That's right.
Yeah. So there was a few guys along the way that, I remember you drove with Terry Finnegan there a couple of times.
Terry Finnegan, we finished, I think, 8th or 9th for the...
Yeah, the Food Town...
Yeah, the Food Town Commodore,
that's right.
Yep. Actually, now Lenore Finnegan, Terry's wife, she was the team manager, right? She was an absolute doozy. They need more like her, you never crossed Lenore, no matter what you did.
Right. Did you find out that in a bad way?
Well, no, not a bad way, but she was a very forceful personality. And, Terry was such a nice, quiet sort of bloke, and Lenore would just tell you exactly what it was. And I'll never forget, I reckon it was probably when the rain was absolutely pouring down. And the car was reasonably well prepared, but none of those cars had good wipers or things, and sort of the radios would never work. And anyway, I remember I must have been, I don't know, we were going okay, and I'm blazing down the track, and I'm going, and I've got on the radio, and I said, because you spoke to Lenore, no one else, right?
So she was on the radio?
Yeah, she was on the radio. Oh, yeah, shit, yeah. And I said, I can't see, am I allowed to swear here?
Go on.
I said, Lenore, I can't see anything. And she said, shut the fuck up and drive the car.
I thought you were going to say that you swore.
No, she did.
Well, that's a way to remember your Bathurst mission from 1992 through the rain, isn't it? Well, you did have John Andretti turn up in crutches one year as well. That's a famous one that people talk about.
Yeah. Oh, well, what happened, of course, I thought I'd get Mario out to drive.
A lot of people don't know that bit. They just remember the Andretti
I wrote to him.
bit.
I've still got the letter upstairs, actually.
You were going for Mario. You were going for the Grand Poobah.
Well, I figured we were out in the commercial business. We needed, whilst, my name I thought was vital to the whole thing. I thought, naturally, perhaps Andretti could tidy it up a little bit.
Yeah, just lift it a little bit. Yeah.
Anyway, so what happened, I wrote to him and he wrote back, I'd say his assistant wrote back saying that whilst he had examined the team and thought it was a first-class operation, he couldn't wait to get here. But unfortunately, he happened to have a nephew who might be able to come.
So he sort of just dobbed him in and said...
Yeah, which was John, who came, and actually a very nice person, actually. Anyway, what happened, he blazed around and crashed.
Mm. But didn't you pick him up from Sydney Airport?
And he's on crutches.
He rolls out in crutches?
Crutches.
You didn't know
No, he rolled out in crutches, so I'll be okay.
Well, he's sadly passed away in more recent years, but...
I only heard that. Someone told me that the other day, actually.
Yeah, he sadly was ill, but he's forever in Australian racing history, not just because he drove with you at Bathurst. He won the first IndyCar race.
He did win the first Indy.
Yeah.
I remember that. We were sitting up there because Cummins were one of our major sponsors for many, many, many years in that first Indy race. I remember we were sitting up in the suite watching, and I said to someone, John Andretti's going to win. No, someone said to me, John Andretti's going to win this race. I said, fair income.
Forever linked together
exactly.
in history. You got to dig out that letter of Mario.
Oh, no.
That'll be cool.
Yeah,
that's really cool. I love that. There's a couple more from some fans. Saren's a regular listener viewer. How did the partnership with Valvoline start? Because you and Valvoline, such a long, and the guys like Cummins and Repco, long histories with those. But Valvoline, where did that all start? Why did that start, and why did it stay for so long?
Well, it originally started through our dealership, our Nissan dealership in Glen Waverley. Michael Porter, who was the MD of Valvoline at the time, was out bashing around the traps looking for business, and I think we were with Castrol at the time, and he just walked in cold to our place. See, back in those days, the people that did things rather than sat on desks and gave orders. I mean, he could have got a rep to go into that, but he realised he could go out there and try and drum up some business. And the guy, I just liked him. He was sort of forthright, actually he played footy for Hawthorn. He played in their he played in one of the grand finals. But anyway, that aside, he came in and we spoke about things and we did the deal, and that was that. But all that just sort of grew from there because I had quite a strong relationship in the car industry, sort of in Victoria, and certainly a little bit interstate as well. And I was able to introduce quite an amount of business to the Valvoline brand in terms of dealership activity. And in that sort of I got to know a few of the Valvoline people in the US through Michael Porter. And then Peter Besgrove, who then took over his position when Michael Porter retired. We sort of just knew those people and it just rolled on, and we had quite a good relationship. And the thing that I found really rewarding dealing with them, like they loved a bit of fun, as we do. And whilst the Yanks were quite prim and proper, you could still get away with a fair bit of humour, for the want of a better word, in those areas. And we used to have some great trips to the Indy race in the US, like a group of dealers from Australia, Michael Porter and the other Valvoline people from around the world would host those, and we'd go on those trips and meet all the US people. And
Well, what happens on tour stays on tour.
Oh, no, there's nothing untoward.
Oh, no. That's the key that I don't think so many people, particularly young drivers and people in the sport, see stickers on cars and have a one-dimensional view. But it's the relationships and the value that you can bring. Great that your cars are on television or that they're winning or going well or that you've got a driver with a nice personality or things like that. But it's the underpinning, it's the business element. That's what you've always been really good at, is to link the other bits together. So that's how those relationships last for so long.
Yeah, look, Aaron, I mean, it's the old Bible, isn't it? Do unto others, you'd have them do unto you. And it's everything. Look, to be honest, like I said at the start, my whole attitude, not every day's a bed of roses, but if most times you can make it that and help make it that for people around you and share a bit of mirth and humour with them and sort of make them involved in what you do, I just think that's worked. And I've been able to and look, like I say, we have a bit of fun, but we know the rules as well. So, I'm very fortunate that I've got that sort of knack in my nature, I suppose.
What's next?
What are we going to do next?
What's next? I mean, obviously, with what's going, you've got, I don't know how you're going to fit more stuff in this building. You've got S5000 cars everywhere. There's TCR cars everywhere. There's Trans Am cars. There's heaps going on with, obviously, the ARG side of things now, the race element with supercars. You don't look like you're slowing down, mate. I mean,
but why would
this.
you?
Well, true. What else are you going to do?
Well, the only thing I would do if I didn't do this as much as I do, I would concentrate more on my harness racing activity. But to be honest, I've seen too many people do things that they enjoy doing, and then because they reach a certain age or a certain this or a certain that, and we should retire this, they're no sooner gone than they wish they were back. And it's not like I don't enjoy doing what I do. I'm so fortunate to have reasonably good health. I can still have a beer and waffle a bit of crap with my friends, and as I say, can share my workday with people whose company I enjoy. And certainly when we've got to do the official type sponsorship things, do it with people whose company I also enjoy. So I've no reason to change anything I do. But as I said before, to me, it's been really so good to have Barry. Not that I haven't got good people, I've got great people here, but the fact is that he understands how I think and how the business, because you need more than smart engineers and mechanical people, you need personalities who can sort of build those deals or expand on the deals that we've put into place. And fortunately, he is able to do that. I mean, not everyone, probably not everyone likes me, not everyone will like him, but he's got a lot more positive, and I think I've got a lot more positive than negative. So do what you do. If you're happy with it, keep doing it.
What do you see as the future for racing with the supercar stuff and the TCR stuff? And obviously there's the sale, there's the involvement that you guys have in all of that. What do you see as the next little chapter of the sport?
Okay, well, the reason we got involved in the ARG activities for a start was, I mean, we'd been in the supercars forever and a day, and then I just could not afford, I could afford it, but I just was not prepared to continue investing substantial sums of money when I could see that there was a better way to do that. And that's why we then decided to go. But also, I wanted to make sure, to be honest, the form of motor racing I like the best is sprint cars. But I really figured because of the workforce we've got and what we do, we just couldn't all of a sudden say we're not in business anymore. And that's why the ARG thing appealed to me. Those TCR cars were reasonably competitive and reasonably cost efficient. But then, of course, what happened, the 5000s, Brian Boyd had spoken to us about assisting with the build of those cars. I mean, everyone had good ideas, but no one had really put their other than Brian, no one had put any money up to get it to happen or used any real motorsport skills to do so. So when we decided to do that, then that, of course, chunked in. And then, of course, along the way, then the Trans Am cars came in, so we were just going along swimmingly. But my view all the way through was to get the motor racing, and I don't say this lightly, but the professional aspect of motor racing together. So ARG, Supercars, probably the Porsche situation in some ways, because there's a bit of that in the professional side. Don't leave behind the people that want to go to the club racing and do all that, but you need a professional level of motorsport to then have the other, because it won't have it unless there is. And I would have loved from day one to have been able to put the ARG business together with Supercars. We tried, we had discussions, but they didn't eventuate. Brian Boyd and myself had looked at the purchase of the Archer business some years ago, but that never happened. But anyway, the opportunity came along now to do it, and I just see it's a great, this really is a great opportunity for everybody in Australian motorsport to benefit by getting together the professionalism that's required to get those categories into, give the really good exposure to motorsport in general, so as more people will want to come and be involved. It's very simple.
Case of bringing whatever fences there were down. So now you can have cross, whether it's a S5000 at the Gold Coast or
That's
here or
right.
there, you can pretty much mix and match now the toolkit of all the categories of cars.
Certain cars and certain categories will suit certain circuits, and you've got to work all that out. But I just think that if you can get this to work together, then to me, I just can't see any negatives. Hey, this won't be easy sailing because everyone wants to have two bobs worth and this and that. The fact of the matter is, it is doable so long as that the people that are investing in getting it to work can work together and get it to happen.
If Gen 3 Supercars goes well, if it's cost effective, if it's all the things that now tick the boxes.
You'll be very careful with that word "if."
Oh, yeah, that's right. But could you ever see a day where GRM could go back to do supercar as well as the other things?
Aaron, look, all I know is that we are in the motor racing business, and clearly you can see this. You can see what's around you. You can look out the back. I mean, we're not going anywhere. And if there was a sensible business opportunity to race billy carts, we would do so, because that's what we want to do. But whether that encompasses a return for us as a team to supercars, that's only in the future.
You never know.
That's right. You never do know.
Just ring Chrysler, they'll ring Volvo, they might get on to someone else.
Well, maybe you got to go somewhere else. Who knows?
Yeah, you never know.
You never, ever do know.
Before we finish, guys, you've done a few top 10 shootouts in your time up at Bathurst. We have a top 10 shootout on the V8 Sleuth podcast that we do. It's just a fancy word association game. I'll say a few things. You tell me the first word that comes into your head.
Sorry, you what?
I'll list a few things, people, places. You give me the first word or two that comes into your head.
Right.
Unfiltered. Don't think about it. Just let it fly.
Righto.
All right? Bathurst.
Excitement.
Ooh, nice. Good start. You're out of the gates well. Volvo.
Absolutely very, very rewarding. Oh, you want one word, don't you?
Rewarding. Yeah. There's your word. Yeah, that's cool. No, you can have a few to warm up. Scott McLaughlin.
A bloody good bloke.
Garth Tander.
Very, very astute.
Astute. Ooh, nice. Monaro.
Fun.
Jason Bargwana.
How good's that?
Probably 3 octaves higher is probably required, but we know what you meant. Tony Cochran.
I love him.
Love? Is that the word? Love? Why do you love Tony Cochran? Why do you love Tony Cochran?
Because I do.
He did a lot of good things.
He did a lot of great things. He burnt plenty along the way, but he got the result. And let me tell you right now, supercars would not be what supercars are today if Tony Cochran hadn't been the person that he was.
You can't make an omelette without breaking a few eggs.
Exactly right.
The description. Peter Jansen.
Twin sisters.
Peter Adderton.
Oh, smart.
Right. One to finish. Think about this one if you need to. Barry Rogers.
I love him.
Hang on, you've got 2 with love here.
I don't care. I do love him.
Okay, you're allowed to love multiples.
Good.
To love multiples. Gary, thank you so much for sitting down and
You're
having
welcome.
a chit chat. I hope it hasn't hurt the brain too hard. I hope we haven't asked too many hard questions. It's been a real pleasure. I love what you bring to the sport. I love what your team does. I love what you've done over the journey, and for hosting us today, we really appreciate it. And there's a few cool trophies here that I might have to accidentally take out of the place. But
Well, you're very welcome, Aaron, and to your able-bodied assistant, Shu.
Mate, thank you for sitting down with us. Good stuff.
And to all the listeners and viewers, whatever we've got, I'm onto the iPod. Is it iPod?
Podcast iPod.
Oh, podcast.
I think they've phased out the iPod these days, but I think you're catching.
I'm learning, you see.
I think you're catching.
You're
on the way.
Well done.
You're becoming technological.
Good. We off?
We're off.